It all started subtly, so subtle that most people didn't even notice it at first. Kendall Jenner and Gigi Hadid had always appeared to be the best of friends. From walking together on the world's most exclusive runways to attending the same after-parties and fashion weeks, their friendship was often portrayed as unshakable. The media called them the ultimate model duo, but as the cameras flashed and the world admired their glamorous friendship, something deeper and far more complex was quietly unfolding behind the scenes. Kendall and Gigi rose to fame almost in parallel. They were both young, beautiful, and born into powerful families. Gigi, the daughter of Yolanda Hadid, grew up in the world of luxury, while Kendall, part of the Kardashian-Jenner empire, was accustomed to the blinding spotlight of reality television. Their careers collided at the perfect time, right when the fashion industry was shifting towards celebrity-driven models. They became the new faces of a generation, social media queens who blurred the line between high fashion and pop culture. In the beginning, their friendship seemed effortless. They appeared together at every major fashion event, posed for magazine covers, and even shared lighthearted interviews about their friendship. But fame is rarely kind to friendships, especially when two careers begin to compete for the same spotlight. By 2016, both Kendall and Gigi had reached global superstardom. Kendall was walking for Chanel, Givenchy, and Versace, while Gigi had secured major campaigns with brands like Tommy Hilfiger and Maybelline. The media began to compare them constantly. Headlines like "Gigi or Kendall, who dominated Fashion Week?" started to appear. Fans picked sides, pitting one against the other in online debates, and though both models publicly denied any rivalry, those close to them could sense the quiet tension growing. It wasn't open hostility. It was something more subtle, unspoken competition. The kind of tension that forms when two people, equally successful, start to wonder who's being celebrated more. Industry insiders whispered that Kendall often felt overshadowed by Gigi's ability to connect with the public. Gigi was known for her warmth, her openness, and her approachable charm. Kendall, on the other hand, was viewed as colder, more reserved, a mystery that the media couldn't quite decode. Things reached a quiet tipping point during the 2018 Victoria's Secret fashion show. Both Kendall and Gigi were part of the elite lineup that year. It was supposed to be a moment of unity, two best friends sharing the runway again. But behind the glitter and wings, there were murmurs of discontent. According to people backstage, Kendall had grown frustrated with how much attention Gigi was getting from the press and the designers. Reporters swarmed Gigi for interviews while Kendall stood by, poised but visibly tense. One insider later told a fashion journalist, "You could see it in Kendall's face. She was trying to smile, but she looked irritated. She didn't like being second in line to Gigi. She's used to being the center of attention." After the show, photos surfaced online showing Kendall walking a few steps behind Gigi on the runway. Fans began speculating immediately. "Why does Kendall look mad?" One comment read, "She looks like she's fuming inside." The tabloids loved it. Overnight, stories of a secret feud exploded across celebrity news outlets. Both women ignored the rumors publicly. Gigi posted a friendly photo of the two together on Instagram with the caption, "Always love walking beside you." Kendall liked the post but didn't comment. It seemed like a small gesture, but fans noticed. They always do. And that's when things started to change. After that season, Kendall became noticeably distant in interviews whenever Gigi's name came up. When asked about their friendship, she often gave short, neutral answers. "Yeah, we're cool," she'd say with a polite smile. Meanwhile, Gigi continued to speak warmly about Kendall, but with a tone that suggested she was aware of the shift. The warmth between them had cooled, not dramatically, but undeniably. The following year, during an appearance on The Tonight Show, Kendall was asked about Gigi's success in the fashion industry. Her response was polite, but fans caught the subtle edge in her tone. "I think Gigi's doing great. She's always been confident in her style," she said, emphasizing the word confident in a way that sparked endless analysis online. Twitter exploded with theories. Some thought Kendall was complimenting her friend. Others heard something else: envy. The truth, according to people close to them, was that Kendall had begun to feel overshadowed not just professionally but socially. Gigi's image as the relatable, down-to-earth supermodel made her a media darling. while Kendall struggled to shed the perception of being too privileged or detached. And while both women were incredibly successful, it was Gigi who often got the warmer press, the emotional magazine covers, the heartfelt interviews. To Kendall, it felt like an imbalance she couldn't quite understand or control. The jealousy wasn't rooted in hate. It was quieter, more human, the kind that creeps in when you feel unseen next to someone who seems effortlessly adored. Their friendship, once easy and spontaneous, became cautious. Public appearances together grew rarer. Their interactions online felt scripted. The once iconic duo that fans celebrated now appeared as two professionals merely coexisting in the same industry. Then came the talk show moment, the one that would change everything. It was supposed to be a lighthearted reunion interview, where both Kendall and Gigi would discuss their modeling journeys and friendship. But the energy in the room told another story. From the start, there was tension in the air, subtle glances, clipped smiles, polite laughter that didn't reach their eyes. The interviewer noticed it too and asked a question that broke the thin layer of calm. "Do you two ever feel competitive with each other?" The silence that followed was heavy. Gigi smiled, brushing her hair back. "I mean, of course there's friendly competition," she said with a soft laugh. "We push each other to do better." Kendall, however, shifted slightly in her seat. Her smile tightened. "I don't really compete with anyone," she said. "I just focus on doing my thing." It was a simple line, but the tone, calm yet sharp, sent shockwaves across social media. The interview clip went viral within hours. Fans analyzed every expression, every micro glance. "Kendall looks angry," one user tweeted. "There's definitely something between them," another wrote. The jealousy no one talked about had finally become visible. What had once been hidden behind filters and friendship captions was now out in the open. Two powerful women, each navigating their own insecurities under the world's gaze. And for the first time, everyone saw what fame often hides, that even in the glittering world of supermodels, jealousy is still very human. The moment that talk show clip hit the internet, everything changed. Within hours, it was trending across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The hashtags #Kendall Shade and #Miskakus GGV's Kendall flooded social media, filled with freeze-framed screenshots and overanalyzed expressions. Fans became instant detectives, dissecting every blink, every smirk, every moment of eye contact between the two models. The internet had decided Kendall was jealous and Gigi knew it. At first, both women ignored the viral storm. Their publicists advised them not to respond, not to give the rumor more fuel. But silence, as it often does in the world of fame, only made the fire burn hotter. Entertainment blogs ran headlines like, "Trouble in the Model Squad?" and "Did Kendall just throw shade at Gigi?" The story spread so quickly that even major news outlets picked it up, analyzing their strained friendship in primetime entertainment segments. Behind the scenes, though the reality was far more complicated, Kendall wasn't furious at Gigi. Not exactly. What she felt was something quieter, harder to define. It was that familiar sting that comes when someone you care about keeps shining a little brighter than you, even when you're both standing under the same spotlight. After the interview, Kendall reportedly left the studio early. According to an insider who was there, she didn't say much, but her mood was noticeably off. She wasn't yelling or crying, the source said. She just seemed cold, distant, like she was thinking about every word she said and how it was going to look. Gigi, on the other hand, stayed behind to thank the crew and talk to the interviewer. She seemed calm, even cheerful, but those close to her said she was uneasy too. Later that evening, she called a mutual friend and asked, "Do you think I said something wrong? I didn't mean to make her uncomfortable." That night, the two women didn't speak. They both posted unrelated photos to Instagram. Kendall shared a mirror selfie with the caption "Chillin'," while Gigi posted a behind-the-scenes shot from a photo shoot. Fans instantly noticed that neither one liked the other's post, and the comments exploded with speculation. For the next few days, tabloids feasted on the story. Old videos of Kendall and Gigi were resurfaced and edited together in dramatic montages titled "The Fall of a Friendship." Commentators on celebrity podcasts analyzed Kendall's tone, calling her bitter, while others defended her, saying she was just being honest. Even fashion journalists joined the discussion, hinting that there had always been quiet tension between the two. But behind closed doors, Kendall was struggling more than anyone realized. She had always been the cool, composed one, the sister who stayed out of drama, who preferred her privacy. Now she was the headline, and not for her work or her achievements, but for something far more personal. Her friends tried to comfort her, saying, "It's just social media. It'll blow over." But Kendall wasn't so sure. "It's not about the internet," she reportedly told one of them. "It's about how everyone sees me. They always think I'm jealous or cold or fake. I can't win." What hurt the most wasn't that people were talking. It was that the narrative seemed to confirm every stereotype she'd fought to escape. For years, Kendall had been labeled as the ice queen of the modeling world. She wanted to be respected for her work, not just her last name or her Instagram following. And yet, here she was, reduced to a viral clip, painted as the envious friend. Meanwhile, Gigi was dealing with her own side of the story. Even though she came off as calm and confident in the interview, she felt guilty. She didn't want to be the reason her friend looked bad. During a dinner with close friends, she admitted, "I feel like no matter what I say, people will twist it. I don't want Kendall to think I enjoy this attention." But Kendall wasn't returning her messages. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between them grew heavier. The modeling world, small and interconnected, began to notice the distance. At a Paris Fashion Week event, the two were seated at the same after-party. But according to several witnesses, they barely exchanged a glance. They were polite, one attendee said, but it was like they were strangers. Even the designers noticed the tension. One creative director recalled a fitting session where both Kendall and Gigi were scheduled back-to-back. "You could feel the energy shift when one walked in," he said. "They didn't say anything bad about each other, but the air got colder. The industry thrives on perception, and once the media sensed division, it capitalized on it." For months, Gigi was portrayed as the golden girl, kind, grounded, universally adored, while Kendall was painted as her aloof, jealous counterpart. The headlines wrote themselves: Gigi's rise and Kendall's fall, how friendship turned into rivalry. And even though both women knew better than to believe everything written about them, the constant comparisons took their toll. Kendall began pulling away from events where Gigi was expected to appear. When asked in interviews about her model squad, she avoided specifics. "I'm really focusing on myself right now," she'd say. "I think everyone's just doing their own thing." Still, no matter how much she tried to move forward, the shadow of that talk show clip followed her. Every expression she made in public was scrutinized. Every red carpet glance analyzed for hints of jealousy or disdain. It was exhausting. Gigi, on the other hand, decided to address the rumors subtly. During an interview with Vogue, when asked about competition in the modeling industry, she said, "There's room for everyone. I think the media loves to pit women against each other. But that's not how I see it. I've got nothing but love for the people I work with." Her answer was diplomatic, thoughtful, and instantly praised. But to Kendall, it felt like another reminder of how differently they were perceived. "She gets called graceful," Kendall confided to a friend. "If I said the same thing, they'd call me fake." The tension between them was no longer just personal, it had become symbolic. To the world, they represented two different archetypes of fame: Gigi, the warm and open one; Kendall, the distant perfectionist. And that binary, whether real or not, began to define them. Months passed. Life went on. They walked the same runways, posed for the same photographers, smiled through the same interviews. But the friendship that once felt easy now felt rehearsed. Then, in early 2023, something unexpected happened. The two were invited to appear in a joint campaign for a major luxury brand. It was an opportunity too big to turn down. A global campaign that would celebrate female empowerment in fashion. Both women agreed, though privately they were anxious about working together again. When they arrived on set, the atmosphere was awkward but professional. The crew kept things light. The photographer cracked jokes, but the underlying tension was palpable. During one break, Gigi walked over to Kendall and quietly said, "Hey, are we good?" Kendall hesitated. Then with a tired smile, she said, "Yeah, just tired of everyone making it weird." It wasn't an apology, and it wasn't closure, but it was something. A small bridge between two women who had been torn apart not just by jealousy, but by the narrative that surrounded it. That day's photo shoot would later go viral for all the right reasons. The images were stunning, the two of them side by side, elegant, strong, and unified. Commenters called it powerful, feminine, iconic. And while neither Kendall nor Gigi addressed their supposed feud directly, the pictures spoke louder than words. For the first time in a long while, they looked at peace. Maybe not best friends again, but no longer enemies in the public eye. Still under the surface, the story wasn't finished. Because jealousy, once it finds a place in friendship, doesn't disappear overnight. It lingers quietly, waiting for the next spark. And that spark would come sooner than anyone expected. The calm after the storm didn't last long. Just when fans started believing that Kendall and Gigi had patched things up, a new wave of controversy erupted, one that neither of them saw coming. It began with a leaked clip. A few months after their joint fashion campaign, a behind-the-scenes video surfaced online. The short clip, less than 20 seconds, showed Kendall turning away during a conversation with Gigi and the creative director, her expression unreadable, almost annoyed. The video was captioned, "Kendall still can't stand Gigi," and within hours it exploded across social media. TikTok edits, fan theories, and conspiracy videos flooded the internet. One user slowed down the footage and pointed out, "Look at how Kendall's jaw tightens when Gigi laughs. That's not friendship." Others defended her, saying the moment was clearly taken out of context. But as always, perception became reality. Suddenly, every headline screamed the same story. The tension returns. Entertainment tabloids reignited the feud narrative, pushing the idea that jealousy between the two supermodels had never truly gone away. Articles dissected their every public appearance, what they wore, how far apart they stood, whether they liked each other's posts. Even harmless moments became ammunition. To make matters worse, the campaign's PR team leaned into the controversy instead of shutting it down. The tension, they realized, was good for engagement. The brand's teaser tagline, "Fierce Women, Fierce Energy," was paired with a photo of Kendall and Gigi standing side by side, not smiling, eyes locked on the camera. It looked powerful, but to fans it screamed competition. Behind closed doors, Kendall was furious. "I can't believe they're using this for publicity," she vented to a close friend. "They're feeding off this rivalry like it's entertainment." Her frustration wasn't just about the brand, it was about everything. Years of subtle comparisons had worn her down. Every time she tried to show confidence, it was labeled as arrogance. Every time she showed vulnerability, it was called weakness. And no matter what she did, she was always the jealous one. Her team urged her to make a statement, but Kendall hesitated. Public responses often made things worse. Still, she couldn't stay silent forever. When a journalist asked about the leaked video during a magazine interview, Kendall finally broke her restraint. "I think people forget we're human," she said. "They see a 5-second clip and build an entire story around it. Gigi's great. We've known each other for years. There's no drama, just people who love to create it." It was calm, measured, and professional. But the internet wasn't satisfied. Some praised her maturity. Others accused her of being passive-aggressive. "She didn't deny it," one tweet said. "She just said we were wrong to notice." Meanwhile, Gigi chose not to comment at all. Instead, she continued posting her usual content, photo shoots, brand collabs, and glimpses of her personal life. To her fans, this silence came across as grace. But to Kendall's followers, it felt like avoidance, even superiority. For the first time, the unspoken distance between them became visible even to those who didn't want to see it. They were no longer two best friends rising through the same glamorous industry. They had become two brands, two public figures whose every move was being pitted against the other. But behind the cameras, things were even more complex. People close to Kendall described her as mentally exhausted. She had begun pulling back from social circles, skipping parties and events she used to attend religiously. She wasn't angry, one insider said. She was just tired of pretending everything was fine when everyone wanted drama. Gigi, on the other hand, was wrestling with guilt. Even though she wasn't to blame for the online chaos, she couldn't help but feel responsible. "I hate that she thinks I'm enjoying this," she told a friend. "We were supposed to lift each other up, not become tabloid bait." The real breaking point came a few weeks later during Paris Fashion Week. Both Kendall and Gigi were set to walk for the same designer, a massive show that had all eyes watching. As they stood backstage, the tension was thick. Photographers whispered, assistants tiptoed. Everyone was waiting to see whether the two women would acknowledge each other. They didn't, not at first anyway. Kendall focused on the mirror, adjusting her hair, her expression perfectly neutral. Gigi stood across the room, chatting quietly with her stylist. The silence between them was deafening. Then, unexpectedly, Kendall approached her. No cameras, no PR handlers, just two women who had once been inseparable. "Hey," Kendall said softly. Gigi looked up, surprised but not unkind. "Hey." For a moment, neither said anything. The noise of backstage chaos surrounded them. Models being called to line up, designers giving last-minute instructions. But in that instant, it was just them. "Can we just—" Kendall hesitated, her voice lower now. "Not do this anymore? The weirdness, the silence. I'm over it," Gigi exhaled, her expression softening. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Me too." They shared a small, almost hesitant smile. It wasn't dramatic or emotional, just genuine. A mutual acknowledgement that the world had blown something human out of proportion. Minutes later, they walked the runway, one after the other. The photos from that show became some of the most iconic of the season. Fans noticed how calm they both looked, how natural. Some even speculated that the feud was over. But the truth was more complicated than that. After the show, they didn't rush to hug or post a selfie together. They didn't give interviews about forgiveness or friendship. What they shared backstage was quiet, real but delicate. A small step toward peace, not a full reconciliation. In the following weeks, the internet continued to debate the story. Comment sections were filled with theories they made up. "No, it's fake PR. You can tell Kendall still hates her." The truth was that no one really knew, and that's exactly how both women wanted it. Because after everything, both had learned the same hard lesson. The more you feed the narrative, the less control you have over it. Still, deep down, something in Kendall had shifted. The jealousy that once simmered quietly inside her wasn't about Gigi anymore. It was about how the world made her feel like she wasn't allowed to be human. She started focusing on things that gave her peace. Art, photography, travel. She spent less time online and more time creating. "You can't control what people say," she told a friend, "but you can control what kind of energy you give back." And Gigi? She continued to thrive, but this time she moved with a little more care. She began speaking more openly about mental health, the pressures of fame, and how social media twists real emotions into entertainment. Many fans saw her words as subtle references to the situation with Kendall. By the end of that year, both women were doing better, professionally and personally. But the shadow of that jealousy story still followed them, quietly lingering in the corners of their fame. Because that's the thing about celebrity narratives. They never really die. They evolve. And while Kendall and Gigi had learned to coexist with it, the world was far from done talking, because the next chapter wasn't about what happened between them. It was about what the world made it mean. By the time another fashion season rolled around, both Kendall and Gigi had regained their composure. On the surface, everything appeared calm. Two icons back to their professional rhythm, walking runways, attending red carpets, posting glamorous snippets of their lives on Instagram. But beneath that polished surface, a storm was brewing again. This time not between them, but around them. The entertainment industry has a way of feeding off tension, and nothing sells better than a subtle rivalry. Editors, producers, and PR teams all understood that controversy drew clicks, and clicks meant money. The Kendall versus Gigi storyline had become too valuable to let go. One entertainment blog published an article titled, "Inside Fashion's Most Silent Feud: Why Kendall Still Feels Overshadowed." It was filled with anonymous sources, half-truths, and exaggerated quotes. "Kendall feels she's always been compared to Gigi," one line read. "She thinks Gigi gets more love because she's seen as friendlier, while Kendall's seen as too cold." The article went viral within hours. Every major gossip page reposted it. YouTubers dissected it, comment sections filled with heated debates. Fans chose sides again, rewriting the same old narrative that Kendall and Gigi had fought so hard to move past. It wasn't just social media chatter anymore, it was business. Popular talk show invited both of them to appear together for what was supposed to be a fun and empowering segment about friendship and fame. At first, both declined, but their management team, sensing a golden publicity opportunity, pushed for it. "It'll show everyone there's no bad blood," Gigi's manager said. Kendall's PR team agreed. Eventually, both gave in. The day of the interview arrived, and the tension in the studio was almost physical. Bright lights, cameras everywhere, a live audience waiting to witness a moment. The host, known for steering casual conversations into headline-worthy moments, started off with charm. "We've got two of the biggest supermodels in the world here today, Kendall Jenner and Gigi Hadid." Applause erupted. Both smiled gracefully. For the first 10 minutes, everything was polite. They laughed about old memories, shared stories from the runway, and even complimented each other's recent projects. But as the conversation flowed, the host's tone shifted. "So," he said, leaning forward with a knowing grin, "you two have been friends for a long time. But you know the internet, always looking for drama. What's the real deal? Has there ever been jealousy between you?" The audience chuckled nervously. Kendall froze for a split second, her smile faltering just enough for the cameras to notice. Gigi laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Kendall took a breath and said calmly, "Honestly, I think it's normal for people to compare, but jealousy? No, I've always admired Gigi." It was a diplomatic answer, but the host wasn't satisfied. "Come on," he teased. "There had to be a time when one of you got a gig the other wanted. You're both at the top of your game. Surely there were moments." The crowd laughed again, sensing the tension. Gigi hesitated before responding, trying to keep things light. "I think it's less about jealousy and more about timing. We both worked hard to get here." Kendall nodded, but the slight stiffness in her expression didn't go unnoticed. After the segment aired, social media exploded. Fans replayed the clip in slow motion, analyzing every micro-expression. "Kendall looked uncomfortable," one user wrote. "You can see it in her eyes," another commented. "Gigi handled it better, she seemed so composed." Once again, the headlines spun out of control. Kendall's awkward reaction goes viral, and Gigi outsmarts host in tense interview. Backstage, Kendall was furious. "Why does it always have to turn into this?" She snapped to her assistant. "We were doing fine until that question. They want drama. That's all they care about." Gigi, who was nearby, tried to calm her down. "Kendall, he was just doing his job. Don't let it get to you." But Kendall's patience had cracked. "Easy for you to say," she said sharply. "You're always the one they like." The words hung in the air like smoke. Gigi looked taken aback, not hurt, just surprised. There it was, spoken out loud for the first time. The truth neither of them had dared to admit. Kendall's voice softened immediately. "I didn't mean it like that. I'm just tired." "I know," Gigi said quietly. "But you can't keep letting them win. They want us to be against each other." It was a moment of raw honesty, and for once there were no cameras to catch it. A few days later, Kendall's team suggested she make a public statement to clarify her side of the story. "Say something empowering," they urged. "Turn it into a message about female solidarity." So she did. She posted a short video on Instagram, sitting in her home office, makeup minimal, voice steady. "I've been in this industry for a while," she began, "and I've seen how easily people can turn women against each other. Gigi is one of the hardest working people I know. We've both had our highs and lows, but what's crazy is how people always assume women must be rivals to be relevant. That's not true. We can both shine." The post received millions of views within hours. Celebrities commented heart emojis and praise. Fans called it mature, honest, and inspiring. For the first time, the narrative started to shift. Gigi reposted Kendall's video to her story with a simple message: "Always proud of you." But not everyone bought it. Some critics claimed the video was too polished, calling it PR damage control. "They're just playing the media game," one article wrote. "Even their honesty is scripted." Still, something about Kendall's tone felt real. You could hear the exhaustion in her voice, the kind that doesn't come from rivalry but from years of being misunderstood. Behind the scenes, though, the industry machine kept spinning. Producers reached out for exclusive follow-up interviews. Fashion magazines proposed a joint cover story titled "Sisterhood in the Spotlight," but Kendall refused. "If they want a story, they can find it somewhere else," she told her manager. "I'm done being their entertainment." Instead, she began stepping away from the constant spotlight. She started working on a documentary-style project about the emotional cost of fame. Something more personal, something that wasn't about clicks. Gigi supported her quietly, even helping connect her with a production team. For the first time in years, They were aligned, not as competitors, but as two women tired of being turned into characters. Still, the internet wasn't ready to let them rest. Every new photo, every subtle expression, every public event reignited old debates. It didn't matter what they said. The world saw what it wanted to see. That's the curse of celebrity. You can tell your truth, but people will still rewrite it for you. And so, as Kendall's video continued to circulate, it became something bigger than just a response. It became a mirror reflecting how the world consumes drama. People loved the story of jealousy not because it was true, but because it was relatable. It reminded them of their own insecurities, their own comparisons. That's why it kept spreading, because deep down everyone knew what jealousy felt like. By the end of that month, both Kendall and Gigi had found a strange kind of peace with it all. They didn't need to prove anything anymore. They didn't need to correct every headline or justify every look. They just needed to live. The real story, the one no one talked about, wasn't about jealousy at all. It was about survival in an industry that thrives on competition. It was about learning to stand tall, even when the world tried to pull you into its narrative. And as Kendall looked out from her Los Angeles home one quiet evening, she realized that maybe the best revenge wasn't proving people wrong. It was simply not caring anymore. Because sometimes the loudest statement you can make is silence. Months passed and the noise surrounding Kendall Jenner and Gigi Hadid began to fade. What had once been the internet's favorite rivalry was now just another story swallowed by the endless cycle of celebrity news. But while the world had moved, on both women were quietly reshaping the narrative behind the scenes, not with grand statements or PR campaigns, but through silence, distance, and small acts of authenticity. Kendall, who had taken a break from constant media appearances, started focusing on things that made her feel grounded. She began traveling without press coverage, choosing places where people didn't care about fame. Small coastal towns, art residencies, quiet retreats in Italy. She started painting again, a childhood passion she had buried under fashion contracts and public scrutiny. "When I paint," she told a close friend, "I feel like I exist for myself, not for headlines." Gigi, on the other hand, leaned into her creativity in a different way. She started working more behind the scenes, designing, collaborating with photographers, mentoring younger models. She talked in interviews about authenticity, sisterhood, and how the modeling world often forced women into silent competition. "People love to compare," she said in one interview. "But if they only knew how hard we work just to stay sane." It wasn't just a coincidence. Both women were evolving in parallel, even if they rarely spoke. Their silence toward each other wasn't tension anymore. It was respect. It was the kind of peace that comes from knowing that not every relationship has to end in closure. Sometimes it just has to exist quietly, in understanding. Then one day, something unexpected happened. A new fashion documentary, called Inside Beauty, The Women Who Changed Modeling, was released. It featured interviews with several top models, including Kendall and Gigi. The producers didn't tell them ahead of time that their segments would appear back to back. Kendall's interview came first. She spoke about how social media blurred the line between real emotion and performance. "Sometimes I think people forget that we're not characters," she said, her tone calm but firm. "When you're constantly watched, you start performing even when you're not supposed to, and that's when you lose yourself." Then came Gigi's segment. She talked about empathy. "I've seen how cruel people can be online," she said softly, "especially toward women who are just trying to find their place. I've learned that instead of competing, we should protect each other, even if we don't always agree." The juxtaposition of their words was striking. They hadn't spoken to each other in months, but the themes they touched, identity, empathy, exhaustion, intertwined perfectly. It felt like a conversation that didn't need to be spoken out loud. Clips from the documentary went viral almost immediately. Fans commented things like, "They're finally on the same page," and "This is growth." For the first time in years, the internet wasn't mocking or speculating. It was listening. Even media outlets noticed the shift. Headlines changed from "Feud of the Decade" to "From Rivals to Reflections." It was a subtle change, but a powerful one. Kendall saw the reaction online and smiled for the first time in a long while. She didn't repost anything, didn't issue a statement. She just watched as people began to understand what she had always wanted to say, that behind every viral clip, every supposed scandal, there were real people trying to navigate impossible expectations. A few weeks later, they crossed paths again, this time at a charity event in New York. It wasn't planned. They were both supporting the same foundation for mental health awareness in the fashion industry. When Kendall arrived, she noticed Gigi across the room, speaking with a group of organizers. For a moment, she hesitated. The last time they'd seen each other in person, things had been tense, not hostile, but heavy. Still, something told her that it was time. She walked over. "Hey," Kendall said, her tone calm, genuine. Gigi turned, and for the first time in years, her smile reached her eyes. "Hey, you?" It wasn't dramatic. No tears, no cameras catching the moment. Just two women standing together, both older, wiser, and tired of being each other's mirror. They talked quietly for a few minutes about the event, about mutual friends, about life. There was no apology, because neither needed one. The silence between them had already done the healing. As the evening went on, a photographer snapped a candid picture of them laughing together near the exit. Neither of them posed for it. The photo wasn't staged or stylized. It was real. When the image hit social media the next morning, fans were stunned. "Kendall and Gigi back together?" One headline read. Another said, "Proof that time heals everything." But this time, the reaction was different. Instead of chaos, there was calm. People didn't argue about who was right or wrong. They simply celebrated the moment. Kendall later posted the photo on her Instagram story with a single caption. "No one really knows what happens behind the cameras, and that's okay." Gigi reposted it with a heart emoji. It was small, but it spoke volumes. In the months that followed, their paths crossed more naturally, not as collaborators or competitors, but as individuals who had survived the same storm. They didn't try to rebuild the old friendship. Instead, they built something new, lighter, less defined, but honest. They would occasionally appear at the same events, exchange smiles, and move on with grace. The world, desperate for drama, eventually gave up. The silence was no longer suspicious. It was powerful. Both women began using their platforms to talk about emotional resilience, about setting boundaries in a culture obsessed with access. "Fame is like a funhouse mirror," Kendall said in a later interview. "You think you're looking at yourself, but it's a distortion. You have to find your reflection somewhere else, in real people, in real life." Gigi added her own version of that sentiment during a podcast. "Jealousy is human," she said. "But the way the world uses it against women, that's what's toxic. The real win is not letting it define you." By the end of that year, the media had finally stopped using their names in the same sentence. They had both grown beyond the story. And yet, the irony was that their quiet evolution became the most powerful statement of all. Because in a world addicted to noise, their peace became revolutionary. The jealousy that no one talked about, the one that headlines twisted and fans exaggerated, was never about hate. It was about identity, pressure, and the cost of being seen by millions who never really see you. Now, years later, when people look back at their careers, they no longer talk about the feud. They talk about how they transcended it. How two of the most photographed women in the world managed to find peace in a culture that feeds on chaos. And maybe that's the real ending. Not reconciliation, not revenge, but release. Because sometimes the most beautiful part of a story is the moment the characters finally walk away from the noise, still standing, still strong, and finally free.